Hey guys, it's Claire. Welcome to In the Real, the podcast that brings back face-to-face conversations. And I am once again here with my good friend Ian.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Ian, aka Ian's Cheese, a film lover, much like Claire here.
Yeah, today we're here to talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer because those are the two big blockbuster movies of the summer. Barbie just hit 1 billion at the box office
Yes.
today. I
It's
think
the first,
Oppenheimer's at like 500 million.
yeah, I think it just passed 500 million. Barbie is the first film directed solely by a woman to cross the $1 billion mark, which is pretty crazy.
And crazily enough, it's still not even in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time.
Well, the fact that it's already hit 1 billion and it's only been out for like what, at least 3 weeks, like it's gonna get up there. It's gonna get up there, surprisingly, which is I did not expect when this movie was announced. Like I figured it'd be fun and kind of cute little Barbie, all about pink and everything, and Margot Robbie. But for it to make $1 billion and still rising, I think I did not expect this, honestly.
I feel like I did expect it. Like as soon as it was literally last July, they posted like the behind the scenes pictures of Margot and Ryan doing the skating stuff. Like I was like, "Oh, this is going to be like one of those movies. Like it's going to make a lot of money."
Did you grow up playing with Barbies?
I did. I did. I
Okay.
played Barbies up until my freshman year of high school.
Oh, well, that's a little bit old, but I mean, I
I
guess
played with Polly Pockets even longer. I loved Barbie. I really did.
so. So maybe your excitement and expectations were a little bit higher than mine. I didn't grow up playing with Barbies.
I never really thought about it as like the Barbie doll movie. I just was like, oh, Margot Robbie's gonna look hot. That's all I was thinking.
I guess I understand the thinking behind that. That is for sure.
My first question, because this is like an off the dome episode because there's really not a ton to talk about, just really specific things about each film. So, which film were you more excited to see? Which film did you see first? And did they exceed or go below your expectations in any way?
Yeah, I mean, so I did the Barbenheimer double feature. So I saw them back to back, which is something me and my friends had talked about doing that for a little while, but we were unsure if it was going to happen because when both movies were kind of announced, it was like a joke, like, oh, see Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day. But then the weeks leading up to it, the hype was really building for this. And we're like, oh my gosh, we actually need to see them back to back. So first we saw Oppenheimer, and we saw that at like noon because it's like a 3 hour long movie. So we started with the more depressing, suspenseful biopic film. And then we saw Barbie second, which we wanted to end on more of a maybe a high note. We didn't want to leave the theaters being depressed, which if you've seen Barbie, maybe you did leave the theaters kind of depressed or sad. It's kind of
I
has a
felt depressed and sad, but that's because my story's a little different, but continue.
yeah. So we saw Oppenheimer, then Barbie. I mean, the film I was more excited to see was probably Oppenheimer because I feel like it fit more of the type of films I like to watch. It's directed by Christopher Nolan, a big fan of his films. So I figured, as far as like the cinematography and the soundtrack and, just the plot of the film being a historical suspenseful biopic and whatnot, I figured I would enjoy that more. My expectations were pretty high for it, considering it's 3 hours long. Some people have said it's his best film, which I don't believe that, but there was a lot of hype behind it. Barbie, I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of purposely didn't watch the trailers. I wanted to go into it I think I watched the initial trailer and at first the teaser, but I kind of wanted to go into it blind because I wanted the film to be mysterious. Even though a lot of people probably wanted the opposite, where they wanted to know about Barbie Oppenheimer's like the secret film. I wanted to keep Barbie a secret. I didn't want to know what it was about. So I didn't really have any sort of expectations going into Barbie. But I would say Oppenheimer was maybe a little bit underwhelming for me. And Barbie was not the film I was expecting, but I think it met my expectations, is how I would describe it.
Yeah. No, Barbie was definitely different than I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
I was gonna do the double feature, but I was seeing Barbie with one of my friends, and so we had to wait for schedules to coordinate, and then I was gonna go see Oppenheimer by myself. And so I was so excited to see it. I got tickets for like a Sunday showing. I'm like, great, I'll have a monthly day. I'll go work out. I'll go get Chipotle. I'll see my movie. This will be great.
Yes.
And I'm driving down like the main street to get there. And I knew there was road construction and I would have to go an alternate way. But, you know, the what is it like the mayor's office or whoever lets you know that like road construction's happening did not let anybody know that the entirety of the road would be unusable.
Come
And
on,
the only
mayor.
way
The
for me to
mayor's
get
office let you down, Claire. Come on
is it
now.
the mayor's office, the governor? I don't know who does
I
that.
don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's his fault.
No, there's like some sort of like city council office that like lets people know about road construction. Like they put it on like social media
Okay.
and stuff so you know what roads to
I
avoid.
see. I see.
I did not see it anywhere. And so for me to make my movie, I would have had to come back to my town because I was already halfway to the other town. Like I already passed the interstate, right? Already passed it. And so I would have had to come back 20 minutes and then drive around the complete other way. Like the interstate wouldn't have even taken me there. The interstate would have taken me up to the point where I had gotten. And so I was already going to miss my movie. So I had to contact the AMC customer service to get my money back, which the only way that worked was by tweeting.
Yeah, so you missed the film because of traffic, right? You just didn't even go to the theater
I
for the
wouldn't
movie.
have made it on time, so it wouldn't have
Okay.
mattered.
Okay.
Saw it the next day, and I was definitely more excited to see Oppenheimer than Barbie because, as you know, I'm a film lover and I knew there was going to be a lot to expect going into it. And I kind of did the opposite of you, where I didn't do any research on Oppenheimer beforehand. I was just like, it's Cillian Murphy. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm already expecting like this Peaky Blinders-esque type of movie. And so I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. So I'm like in the theater Googling all the little things that they're saying because I'm like, is this real or not?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I loved it. I loved it so much. And I think I definitely liked it more than Barbie. But
Okay.
then the next day, I went to see Barbie with one of my friends, and it, this is another instance, and I still have not gotten my refund for this. We were in the theater, and it was the part where Ken was kicking Barbie out of the dream house because she had gotten
Yes.
back. And, you know, the power of the theater went off because they were also playing Sound of Freedom at that theater.
Okay,
And so
okay. So did the theater just go black? I mean,
every single screen in the entire theater turned off. And our audio came back on, but nobody else's did. And so at this
okay.
point, they weren't able to turn anything back on. They weren't allowed to give refunds. But weirdly enough, people were buying snacks and they were able to access their cash registers, you know, just like really weird stuff. And so they were like, you need to either call your credit card companies to get your refund or call the ticket company. And I had to purchase my tickets through Fandango because the Regal Theater would not allow me to purchase the tickets through them for whatever reason. It kept redirecting
Mm,
me. And it's not
okay.
one of those movies that you could just go to the theater and show up, you know, and you
Yeah.
won't have a seat. So I tried to reach out to Fandango and their customer service is terrible. You can't talk to a human, you can't get through to anybody. Their phone number doesn't work. Their customer service says you have to have an account to get your refund. And I checked out as a guest, so I don't have an account, so I can't get my refund.
Yeah, I think theater chains are notorious for having bad customer service. I mean,
Mhm.
I've had similar experience before trying to get refunds. One time they double charged a card. I for getting concessions, they double charged me. And it took like 3 days to finally be able to figure out how to get that charge back. So I mean, what they're supposed to do is what I thought I've seen this before is when if the movie has technical errors when you leave your theater, they're supposed to hand you a voucher or something, or they're supposed to have
They weren't
somebody
able to do
there.
that.
They're supposed to have somebody there that tells you what your next option is, so that you're not
Mhm.
left in the dark with a bad experience at their theater. You know,
Yeah, they
so
definitely did not take care of that situation very well at all. Like if you're going to like purposely shut your power off, then you need to be like equipped to handle what comes after that because but like literally over 500 people were in the theater and we all had to leave. So
That's crazy. Yeah, that's unfortunate
Yeah.
that you missed the ending.
I missed all the good parts. I didn't even get to see Ryan Gosling do the Ken number.
Oh, that's the best.
Um,
That's the best part of the movie, honestly.
the best part for me going into it was Will Ferrell, and I so desperately wanted to see him in Barbie World.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think I don't know. Are we in spoiler territory? I mean, does it
Yeah,
matter
we're
to
in
talk
spoiler
about?
territory.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think for me, probably the weakest part of Barbie was probably the Will Ferrell storyline. Him being the owner of Mattel. I felt like I feel like they didn't really add too much to the film other than like pushing Barbie back to Mattel or like
I thought he was funny.
you think it was funny?
I thought he was so funny. And you have to admit, Greta Gerwig is catching those sex education stars like they're Pokemon.
Oh, so which stars in the movie are from Sex Education?
So Connor Swindles was the intern at Mattel, the one who was like,
Oh,
"Can I whisper?"
yes, yes, yes.
He's a huge part of that show. And then, so his character in sex education is like the bully, and the
Mhm.
person he bullies that ends up being his boyfriend later on is Shudigawa Gatwa, who plays the African Barbie
Okay, okay,
or the African kin.
okay. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then Emma Mackey plays like the cool girl in
Hmm.
sex education, and she was the Barbie with like the black hair who was like always next to Margot Robbie,
Yes, yes.
like the one that looks a lot like her.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, I just think that I know you didn't see the last part of the film with Will Ferrell in Barbie World, but nothing really happens when he gets to Barbie World.
I heard it was pretty disappointing because Barbie apologizes to Ken, but he doesn't apologize back, and it's like kind of setting the film back, is what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the part of the film you missed, basically, it's like, yeah, I mean, what the Barbies do is I don't know how far you got in the film exactly, but what the Barbies do is they turn the Kens against each other, like they use masculinity as a weapon to basically break apart the Kens. Because first they were using it to bring down the Barbies. And the Barbies were like, you know what? We need to strike back by using the men against each other. So basically, the Kens have a Ken war, which leads to the Ken musical, where they're like fighting each other through dance and song. And then basically the Kens like destroy each other, and Barbie, Ken's like very in despair, and Barbie's trying to talk him through these feelings he's having of like feeling alone and his masculinity is down. And she's like, it's okay to feel that way. And he's kind of suicidal in some ways. Like he actually almost jumps off of the Mojo Dojo Casa house or whatever. Like he almost jumps off, but she talks him out of it. And then they kind of come to a resolution where they're like, I'm Barbie and you are Ken. We're not Barbie and Ken. I can be Barbie and you can be Ken. We don't have to be a pair. Like there is
Mhm.
some value in just being Ken.
I think my favorite part of the entire movie of what I had seen was Will Ferrell gets everybody into roller skates and he's like, just go. It doesn't matter. Just go.
Yeah, yeah. And then they skate. And when they go in the Barbie world, they're continuing to skate, I think. I think they just keep skating. I can't remember, but that's like their
They like get
thing.
on all of the Barbie transportation things.
Yes, yes. But I think they bring the roller skates with them. I can't remember. But yes.
Too good. Too good.
I mean, what would you give Barbie out of, let's say, out of five Barbies, five Barbie dolls, how many Barbie dolls would you give Barbie?
Uh maybe I'd maybe give it a skipper, like a 3.
Okay. So
Like
three
being
out of
like
five.
Barbie, Ken, Skipper, Midge, Alan, you know?
I see what you're saying. Okay, okay.
Like I
So
loved how fake everything was and how colorful everything was, but I feel like her going into the real world and finding the child really made no sense. Like you could have just gone straight to the America Ferrera route.
yeah. Yeah, the plot is very simple when it comes to the real world. Like the second they're in the real world, it's like, They're already getting into like a bunch of
It
little,
lost me.
yeah, it's like a bunch of little goofy scenarios. Like Ken immediately figures out what it's like to be a real person, and then she runs into an angsty teen who's like the opposite of her, and then they
Who,
get
by the
dragged
way,
in.
they're all named after the Bratz dolls. Did you catch that?
I watched a TikTok about that. That's like a Easter egg or whatever, that all the girls at the lunch table, they're supposed to be the brats. So I
Hmm.
guess that was an intentional thing they did.
Yeah, I think the issue is, I mean, Greta wasn't supposed to direct it, and I think you really shouldn't write and direct the movie. You kind of need a different perspective for both parts.
So she wasn't supposed to direct it. I didn't hear about that.
She and her husband wrote it, and then she was trying to find a director, and Margot said, "You're directing this, or I'm not going to be in it." And she's like, "Well, I want you in it, so I'm going to direct it."
I mean, I think it doesn't really feel too much like a Greta Gerwig film, but
No.
there are some themes as far as the writing goes that I do feel like kind of related to like Little
Oh yeah, with a
Women
guy
and Lady
pining
Bird.
after the girl.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also just the aspect of like a young woman, in this like male-oriented world, and then she's kind of figuring out herself and what it means to be a woman. I think the themes there from Greta Gerwig are surprisingly there. Like that's Barbie's not the film you would think of those themes necessarily being there, but I like that she was able to kind of intertwine those into the Barbie franchise and give it some character. It added some more layers to the film. So I guess I'm glad she wrote it. As far as directing, I mean, could
Yeah.
somebody else directed it? Probably, I guess.
I don't know who would have though. Maybe Sofia Coppola is the only person I can think of.
I don't know if they would have stuck with a woman director. I know like Patty Jenkins, who did like Wonder Woman. I mean, I don't know if she would have been like a good
I don't think
choice.
a
Yeah.
male could have directed it though and had like the impact that it's supposed to have.
Yes, I think it needed to be directed by a woman. I think that was necessary to the film's plot. I think it would have been a little bit, it just wouldn't have made sense. Like if a man was trying to tell this story, which has been done for years and years. I think there's been a lot of films that you're like, that was directed by a man, and like they kind of only like half tell accurately like what it's like to be a woman, or like you can tell it's very male, like aimed towards men. This
Yes.
was a film about women, for women, that men are also made to watch and appreciate and understand and help their perspective about things as well.
Yes. I think that's the big takeaway from it is it's a movie for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true, and I know the media is trying to spin it as a very like anti-man, pro-feminism type of film, but I don't think if you watch that film, you should take that, should take that away from it.
No, and I think that's what like the turning point of the film goes to is Barbie World works because we have Kens, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Like it's not
exactly,
gonna work without both. And they made that
exactly.
very clear when they, were being very misogynistic in Ken World.
Yes, yes, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely liked Oppenheimer more. The cinematography was insane.
I know, yeah. And I mean, I think I like the score was probably for me the most memorable part. I love the cinematography too.
There were
I
some
think
memorable parts. It was not the score.
yes, true, true. Yes. Like Killian Murphy being naked on a couch. That was pretty
Yeah.
memorable.
Please tell me they green screened in the whole courtroom sex scene thing, because Jesus Christ, I would not have been able to be like a fly on the wall in that room and pretend like nothing was going on.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I guess to give context to the audience, there's a scene, if you haven't seen the film, spoiler alert, there's a scene where Oppenheimer's having like they're questioning him about things, and it's getting kind of intense, and he's almost having like internal memory flashbacks to moments in his life that are it's like
Hmm.
it's the pressure's building, and there's like a sex scene. He's literally in a room being questioned, but it's like turning into a sex scene. So it cuts to him with his clothes off, and then it cuts to
Hmm.
him with a lady on top of him, Florence Pugh, having sex with him. I think to me that's probably I feel like that's like the one of the weirdest parts of the film. I don't know if that needed to be in there. That felt a little weird,
I don't
but
think it needed to be in there in that particular context.
Yes, yeah. I think they could have easily had just like a flashback, like cut to them in a room having sex rather than in the room doing it. I mean, I guess maybe I think
They
a
could have even
purpose.
had like the same like you know how like they'll do a thing where you're in the scene and then you're somewhere else. They could have had the same setup just with nobody else in the room.
Yeah, it's kind of like it kind of reminds me of have you seen Joker? There's the scene where they're going through, he's reading the papers about his mother being like questioned in the insane asylum, and it cuts to him in the insane asylum room watching
Mm-hmm.
her being questioned. I think it would have
Mm-hmm.
made more sense to do something like that rather than the sex in the actual questioning room.
I
But
was like, oh my God. Because I would have been more comfortable doing it than sitting in the room watching it, is how weird it
yes,
was to me.
yes. I mean, I think to dive into something like that, I guess the director's decision to do that was probably to show how vulnerable Oppenheimer was in that moment, almost like he was being naked and having sex in front of everybody, like the the blanket was being ripped off and everything was being revealed to everybody in the room, and almost felt like he was being back in a vulnerable naked position. I mean, I guess that's probably what he was going for, but it was awkward to watch for sure.
I will say my favorite thing that they did, and I love when they do this in movies, is when they change perspective and you like open to a shot of something happening in somebody else's perspective, and they're like seeing it from their perspective, and they think it's
Yes.
something different, and then at the end, you finally see it from the perspective it was meant to be seen in, and it's completely different, and then it brings it back full circle. That's one of my favorite things that film does, and I think they did a really good job with it in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of great directors. Like I think Quentin Tarantino does things like that in his films where like different storylines kind of meet together at points where you get to like see the same scene twice, but with
Hmm.
different context and stuff like that, So Oppenheimer, he kind of tried to bring in those themes too, as well, which I liked, especially with the scene with Albert Einstein, where it's kind of at the beginning of the movie where like you kind of see Einstein and Oppenheimer far away, like almost off screen having a conversation, and you don't really know the context of what was said. And then the very end of the film, it's revealed what it was. And now, like, if you look back at the whole film, the meaning of everything of what was said in that
Hmm.
conversation, once it's revealed, it's just cool that, like you said, a filmmaker can do that. It just adds so much more to the storytelling aspect of the film.
And it like kind of all blows up in your face at one all at one time. It's like, oh, Strauss was just crazy. Like he was
Yeah.
jealous and crazy, and he made something up in his head and thought it was real instead of just
Yeah.
like having a conversation.
Yeah. And taking advantage of, the scientists and everything. And, there's the whole ethical debate of like, was this actually to save humanity, or was it to, just take political, power and destroy it in some ways too? That's kind of another layer of what Einstein's, saying at the end was.
Yeah, he was adorable. He was probably my favorite character because it's just like not necessarily the comedic relief, but the adorable relief. I guess I do want to ask. It was revealed through Twitter the other day that Christopher Nolan does not do ADR for his films, and he takes all of the sound from the moment. Do you think it hurts or helps his films?
Yeah, I heard about that tweet or whatever. I saw a tweet about that, how he's like, he doesn't do, he doesn't do ADR? Is that what it is?
He doesn't do ADR at all.
Yeah, it's just natural sound. I think, and I haven't thought about it much in that aspect of recording just the actual dialogue and not re-recording it. I think the thing that hurts the most is just the amount of music and sound in the films that drowns out the dialogue. That's how I viewed it. I've never viewed it as like, I wish I could hear the dialogue more crisp and clear. I just wish everything would be turned down a little bit so I could
Yes.
hear what's being said. Because I don't, have you seen his previous film Tenet before? That film I really did not like, for the sole purpose of I could not understand what they were saying for about 90% of the film, honestly. And I know some people have kind of debated on like, oh, I could hear everything, or I was able to understand it. As a moviegoer, I mean, I'm a big film guy. If I can't understand most of your film, something is off. And I don't know, he's a prestigious director and everything, and I'm not hating on him that much, but I couldn't understand what was being said in the majority of that film. And some of that I think kind of bleeds into Oppenheimer. And I think a big problem is also the speed at which this film is edited at. The pacing is crazy fast, which I think for my experience hindered it a little bit because it was kind of hard to understand what was being said because I guess the ADR is a problem. Like there's not any ADR. So there's a lot of like noise being picked up when they speak. So you gotta kind of hear it through that too. But it's edited really, really fast. It's nonstop. There's really barely any moments in the film where you can just like sit in a moment in a scene and really take in like any sort of
The only
emotion.
scene we took in was Florence Pugh riding him in the courtroom.
Yes. I mean, that's, it's just like I wish there had been more scenes that where you could really take in the emotional aspect of the film, because I think really the film is portraying suspense and building up and that tension. And I just think there needs to be more moments where you really feel, the grief and the sadness. And I think, the scene that probably in the film I felt it the most was the gymnasium scene where Oppenheimer is speaking to the crowd of people after the bomb has been, gone off and unfortunately, killed, all those people. That's a scene where, Nolan stripped a lot of the sound away. And it's just a very interesting scene that hasn't really been told before where, he's saying like, we did it. The bomb has gone off to success. And instead of hearing all of the cheering, it cuts to the silence, just how the bomb, when it goes off, there's silence as well. There's like a delay in noise. And I think for me, that was the most impactful scene of the movie. And I wish there was more stuff like that, where the soundtrack is stripped away. There's interesting edits, like the way it's told. I wish there was just more of that. So as far as the ADR goes, I mean, I just wish I could hear the actors better. For
Yeah,
sure.
he just
Yes.
needs to turn the volume for the music down just a little bit.
Yes, like we get it. It's a good score, but I mean, if it takes away from your scene because you can't hear anything, I feel like that's a problem for
Yeah, I think the
sure.
score is supposed to help the film, not hurt the film. And this is such a gray line with that. In a lot of cases, it does help, but in some cases, you don't know what's happening. Also, like you said, the pacing was super fast in Oppenheimer. It would have worked had the film not been 3 hours long. If it was like
Yes.
2:15, that could have worked.
It felt like there was just so much story to tell and so much was shot that they just had to cram it all in. Like it didn't really feel like a necessarily planned out paced film. It was just like, all right, we have all of this 3 hour, they probably had more than 3 hours. I think I saw something
No, they said
where,
there were no deleted
yeah, there's
scenes.
no deleted scenes. So they included everything. And they're like, this can't be like a 5 hour movie. So we need to can we cut these scenes a little bit quicker? Like every single second break we have, cut it. And it just didn't feel like, obviously they do plan out everything, but it just didn't feel like they planned for any slow moments. It's just all fast, which I guess is his style now. I guess that's what he's trying to do.
The slowest moment is Strauss walking out to Einstein and Oppenheimer.
Yes, yeah. That is the slowest scene. I forgot that was even a little moment. Yeah, he just walks out there. Yeah, Oppenheimer. I thought it was good. I think I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5, which is also what I gave Barbie. I also gave it a 3.5 out of 5. So in
I think
my
I give
eyes, they
Oppenheimer a
are.
4.
You gave Oppenheimer a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think on a rewatch, it could go up. I feel like because there was just so much to
Yeah.
absorb. There's probably a lot of stuff I didn't really grasp the first time that rewatching it. I mean, for me, the whole trial aspect of the film, like the final third of the film, I really wasn't understanding necessarily what was the issues being discussed in those like meetings and whatnot. That was kind of going over my head. So I think a
Mhm.
rewatch, I would maybe be able to understand it a little bit better and enjoy it.
I think Christopher Nolan does that a lot in his films. Like he makes movies that are intended to be rewatched. Like especially with Memento, you pick up on so much more. like the
Yes.
10th time you watch it, and like you will watch it 100 times, and every single time you're still picking up something that you didn't pick up the first time.
Yeah, I agree. Memento's a great example of that because that's a film where it's going through memories in a way, where it's like going back through like a timeline backwards. And it's that's like not just like the theme of the movie, but it's very specifically told in that way to have reveals or to reveal information very specifically that I think some like I don't know, films that deal with time travel or deal with time like don't necessarily take the time to carefully craft. That's what I do really appreciate about Nolan is he doesn't just do those things for shock factor. It's an actual way of like storytelling to make it more interesting. Because I mean, you could easily make a movie about Memento where a guy, you know, loses his memory and he has to figure out the past and what happened. Or you could tell a film and actually literally reverse the whole plot and tell it from start the beginning of the film is actually the end of the film and go from there, which is really, really cool. And it's something that's not done, you know, at all, which is why I like Nolan. I think Nolan sometimes is trying to take it to the extreme in how he's telling the story, especially because it's 3 hours long as well. But I feel like there's a little bit of his artistic, you know, I don't know that the way it felt special back then does not always feel as special now, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I also think a lot of it has to do with dialogue. There's so much dialogue that
Yes.
it is hard to digest what everybody is saying.
Yes. I 100% agree. Yes.
Like
I
the back and forth at the table with like Matthew Modine and Robert Downey Jr. and like you have all these big name people who do an amazing job, and then you're just like, what am I watching?
Yeah, I mean half the dialogue of the film feels like goes over your head. Like is it really important? You know, like a slower paced film, there are certain lines and certain things that are said in a certain way that you can sit with.
Are there any performances in either film that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, obviously Ken and Barbie was, you know, so funny. I mean, every single line, just the way he says things and the almost like boyhood innocence that his character takes on and portrays is just like super funny. I think he's definitely the highlight of the film. What about you? Are there any characters you really enjoyed?
I'm trying to think. I think Will Ferrell, I mean, speaks for itself how funny that
Mm-hmm.
whole thing was. Getting out of Mattel was just so funny. I think I was more impressed with the performances in Oppenheimer because I wasn't expecting them. I was expecting Barbie to be over the top and dramatic and cheesy, and I wasn't like expecting Oppenheimer to go as hard as it did. And I mean, we've seen Robert Downey Jr. in the courtroom before. We've seen the judge. We know he knows how to get in there and work a courtroom. And he certainly worked that courtroom.
Yes. Yeah. I thought Robert Downey Jr. was good. I liked Cillian Murphy, honestly. I think his performance, I mean, it's what I expected, but I think there are just certain films where he's talking or doing scenes that I would love to rewatch, especially the ending of the film, just the way he kind of like says those few lines at the end that were really impactful.
I think Emily Blunt's performance was also really good. I mean, you have to feel bad for her character. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
maybe they're not the greatest parents in the world, but they're still people.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
like,
isn't
you
there a
put
point
her
where they
through it.
they almost abandon their baby in the middle of the
I know.
film?
I was like, what? All right. Well, with my terrible internet connection, I think that's where we're going to end it today. Thank you so much, Ian, for troubleshooting with me. It's been a pleasure talking to you about one of our mutual favorite passions.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks for having me on. I know the Hollywood is trying to shut us down from talking about Barbenheimer, but you know what? There's just so much to discuss. Thank you all for listening. I think the next Devil feature that's coming out, Claire, I believe it's Paw Patrol and the new Saw movie. I think are the next two films coming out on the same day. People are calling it Saw Patrol. I don't
Yay,
know if
I love that.
so. Maybe we'll do a
Maybe we'll do
podcast on
another
that.
one if this gets more than 20 views.
Hopefully. But thank you for having me on, Claire. I appreciate it. Love talking to you.
Yeah, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Ian's Cheese on Instagram and Twitch. I stream twice a week. I've been doing some fun video games recently. I'm about to stream some Pikmin 4. If you guys are into that, follow me at Ian's Cheese. Would love to have you follow me.
All right, well, thank you so much for doing this.
No problem, Claire. Thank you.